Hello, everyone. Today, I am starting my season previews for the NHL teams, and I'm going to start off with my favorite team, the New York Rangers. So, I have 6 sections set up here, to, and it is the top 5 teams, top 5 players on the team, which isn't exactly top 5 players. It's the top 3 forwards and top 2 defensemen. Your bottom 5 forwards, your bottom 5 players, which is essentially made to show how good the depth is on the team. The goalie tandem, self-explanatory. Other notables are players that aren't in the top 5, but could end up pushing their way in there by the end of the season. Rookies to look out for, and predictions for stats of some players that you can see this season. So just getting right into it, the top 5 forwards for the Rangers, pretty easy to come up with. Panarin and Zibanejad, the obvious top 2 forwards. Kreider's up there. You can debate a few players, but I think that it's Kreider. It's their number 3 forward. And then you have Fox and DeAngelo on defense, which I don't see any debating with that. Which overall, Panarin and Zibanejad, if they have seasons like they did last year or even close, the Rangers are in for a pretty good season, I think. And Kreider is pretty consistent, pretty reliable. And you can usually expect probably about 3 points every 4 games out of Chris Kreider. Very solid player and very tough too. Adam Fox going to his sophomore year. We'll see if he can continue his amazing strides that he made last year, and if he can prove league wide that he is on the same level as Kel McCarr and Quinn Hughes, which a lot of people think that he is a pretty big step below. Moving on to the bottom 5, though, you have Brett Howden, Phil DiGiuseppe. I have either Lemieux or Gauthier. I think it'll be Lemieux, but it's very close between the two. Brendan Smith and Jack Johnson. So I'm going to go to the defense right away. That bottom 2 is terrible. Jack Johnson, no idea why we picked him up. I would much rather see a K'Andre Miller in the NHL. And someone like Jack Johnson, I understand that they want to get some veteran leadership in the locker room, but it just doesn't make sense to get someone like Jack Johnson, who's coming off such a terrible season. And Brendan Smith he's serviceable. He's not awful. I'd probably want him as my number 7 defenseman. On here, he'd be the number 5 unless if a rookie pushes in, which we'll get into later. And, but he did decent as a forward last year, and he's an okay defenseman. But the contract is egregious. And just looking at the contract makes you wish that he was never on the team. But he's not an awful player. A lot of players fall into terrible contract. Everyone thinks they're a terrible player. But it's not the case with him. He's just doesn't live up to the contract. And he's not a great player, but he's okay. Bottom 5 forwards with Howden, DiGiuseppe, and Lemieux Gauthier. I give Lemieux the edge to be a bottom 5 forward because I do think Gauthier will make strides to being a top 9 forward this season. But if he doesn't, I don't think it'll be a huge disappointment or a huge surprise either. He was on our 4th line mostly last year. And he did pretty well, but he's young, and I expect him to take a stride forward. And hopefully play on that, what I would assume would be playing on the 3rd line with Lafreniere and Chytil. Or, actually, I think that would be Lafreniere and Strome. Which, actually, I forgot to put on notables. Chytil, which we'll get into later. But I expect pretty good things out of Gauthier. But having DiGiuseppe, Lemieux, or Gauthier on the 3rd line is a little shaky. I really like Lemieux, and I do think that he does have the talent of a third liner, and I think Gauthier will have the talent of a third liner this season. But the role that that Lemieux plays is a little shaky, and it's shaky to know if Gauthier will be there going into, I think it's his sophomore season. Di Giuseppe, we called him up last year and he did really well. He played some time actually with Zibanejad, and he was fine there. He's a player that you can kind of move everywhere in the lineup. And it's a solid bottom line guy. And Brett Howden gets a lot of crap from Rangers fans that I don't think that he deserves. He's kind of just there's something wrong, who do you point out? And actually watching the play-ins, other than Capo Caco, I thought that he was our best player. And the next player that you can make an argument for is Jacob Trouba, maybe. But I think that he is, in my opinion, ideally a third line center, but we don't have a good second line center. After that, we have three very solid, probably ideally third line centers. Moving on to the goalie tandem, got a rookie in Igor Shesterkin and another young goalie in Alexander Georgiev. And it's very up in the air. Shesterkin, if he has a season like he did last year, could be a Calder winner. Georgiev, sorry about that. But Georgiev has been pretty consistent throughout his tenure with the Rangers and has been a very good goalie for them. And despite the fact of his stats sometimes not being fantastic, I do blame that on the defense mainly, which I do think it'll get better with Lindy Ruff being fired. But Georgiev is a very solid goalie. In my opinion, top 10 backup goalie in the NHL. You can watch that video if you want. And I think that net is their strongest point. Depth-wise, Shesterkin and Georgiev. Even if Shesterkin gets hurt, I don't think that they're that bad off with Georgiev, but they will be worse off than Shesterkin, definitely. And now going on to the other notables, I have Pavel Buchnevich, Ryan Strome, Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere, Jacob Trouba, Ryan Lundgren, and Philip Hedl. So I'm gonna ignore that I have Lafreniere there for now because I will talk about him in the rookie section. But Buchnevich is a player that always leaves you wanting more. You see a lot of skill out of him and a lot of drive some nights, but then his points are okay. And you're left thinking, this kid can be great, but there's just something missing. And I know the advanced stats community loves Buchnevich, and I'm very much hoping for a breakout season this year. But if it doesn't come, I would think that the Rangers would look into trading him, even if it does come though, considering that he would be up for a new contract, which would be a big chunk of money if he breaks through. And logjam at wing, where he's keeping back players like Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere, if you can move him over to the right wing, or even Gauthier if he breaks out this year. Then Ryan Strome, very solid second line center last year. He was playing with Panarin, which he gets a lot of. He's only good because he's with Panarin. And if he's second line center again this year, he'll probably get a lot of that again. And it'll be very interesting to see if he can repeat the same year. The same kind of season he had last year. Capo Caco had a terrible year last year in his rookie year. He looked kind of lost out there some nights, but on the power play, he was fantastic. And one of our best power play players. And then the play-ins. I know he didn't get a point in the play-ins, but he was by far the best player out there. And he showed a lot of promise. And I expect around 40 points from him being reasonable, I would say. Somewhere around there, probably a little bit lower, but it could very well be higher. Especially if he is on the second line with Panarin. And I'm expecting a big year from him. Like I said, I'm going to breeze over Lafreniere until the rookie section. Jacob Trouba, I think he'll have a bounce back year. I don't think that he'll repeat what he did in Winnipeg 2 seasons ago, though. It'll be very interesting to see with him, new defense coach, and who's his line mate. Because we're pretty sold on a tandem of Fox and Lundgren, which leaves the other defenseman, probably Brendan Smith if they're repeating what they did last year with his tandem. But we'll have to see. Ryan Lundgren, like I mentioned, playing with Adam Fox, I personally think he's a very good defensive defenseman. And he's really helped Adam Fox be able to take more offensive chances, knowing I have Ryan Lundgren back there to help me. So he could very well end up being a top five because of his defensive play. DeAngelo's all offense though, so it's really what DeAngelo is in offense. I think Lindgren is in defense, not to the same extent though, which is why DeAngelo's in the top five. And Philip Chytil, I think, will be the second line center by the end of the year next year. I don't know if he gets it right out of the gate though, and he really needs to show it this year that he can be a top six forward, because as of right now, I'd say that he's our best shot to have a number one center after Zibanejad leaves. And if it's not him, we need to draft someone or sign someone or trade for someone. But we'll have to see. Going to the rookies, Alexis Lafreniere we'll talk about now. First overall pick this season and is expected to be phenomenal. I think that he'll be on the third line, and somewhere around 30 points would be very reasonable for him. And I would consider a successful season. And then from there, the sky's the limit. This kid looks amazing, and I think that he'll be great for them. And now I have Vitaly Kravtsov and K'Andre Miller listed here. Both with question marks, though, because we don't know if they'll be in the NHL. Vitaly Kravtsov is not starting the season with the Rangers. He will start in the KHL. But when the KHL season ends, he could very well come over. And if he does come over, I'd probably say he pushes DiGiuseppe out of the lineup, moves Gauthier down to the fourth line, and Kravtsov gets a third line role with probably Strome and Lafreniere. Unless if Lafreniere pushes his way into a top six, which I could very well see. And I'm expecting big things from Kravtsov. And K'Andre Miller, the Rangers have been hyping him up on their Twitter. So I could very well see him coming in. If he comes in, I think he'll be a top four defenseman, though. They are not going to bring him up to give him third pairing minutes. Maybe he'll play with Jacob Trouba, and maybe they'll sit Jack Johnson and make a bottom pair of Smith and DeAngelo, which the defense looks a lot better if K'Andre Miller can come in and be a top four defenseman. And finally, Igor Shesterkin. I'll get into the specifics about what I expect from him later, but he looked really good last year, and I think that he'll continue it into this year. So my predictions for top three scorers on the team, I have Panarin with 25 goals, 50 assists, 75 points. You'll always see it with around about 5 for every stat, because I'm just going estimates. It's pretty close to the same points per game he had last year, a little bit lower though. I think again he'll be in conversation for the Hart. Zibanejad, I have 30 goals, 35 assists, 65 points. If he goes higher, I honestly wouldn't be surprised. There were points last year where I really thought Zibanejad might be a little better than Panarin, actually. And if Zibanejad didn't get hurt last year, he would have won the Richard hands down. If you're going by goals per game, at least. And I have Chris Kreider, 15 goals, 25 assists for 40 points. That one I'm a little shaky on. Like I said, I could see it being Buchnevich, I could see it Lafreniere, Kakko. Just pick them. I just picked Kreider because I had him in my top 5. It could even be DeAngelo, honestly. He's a very good scorer, even though he's a defenseman. And now my prediction for Shesterkin stats for the starting goaltender. Around 35 games played, I think, is reasonable for him. They're under 2.6 goals against and a 922 save percentage. And another bold prediction that I have, the Rangers will have 2 Calder finalists. Whether it's, and I think that it'll be Shesterkin and Lafreniere, and one of them will win it. It probably will go with Kaprizov as the third finalist, and then any one of them could win. My money would be on Shesterkin as of right now. If he can make the Rangers do what I think that they will do. And my prediction for their standings is anywhere from 2nd to 6th in the Eastern Division. So I'm not going to give you my solid, I think they'll be 2nd, I think they'll be 3rd or whatever in this. Because once I get all my predictions done for every team, I will make a big prediction video where I predict the standings as a whole. But anywhere from 2nd to 6th in the East is very reasonable for the Rangers, I would say. They're a very unpredictable team. A lot of youth on that team. And it's really all about, will the kids do well? If Kakko falls short, Lafreniere isn't as advertised. None of our players have bounce back seasons. Shesterkin was a flash in the pan. They could be last in the division, but and especially if Zibanejad and Panarin have down years from last year, and last year just happened to be really good. But anyway, that's my prediction. And what I was saying about Shesterkin, if the Rangers can make the playoffs with him, that'll really help his chances to be nowhere near the playoffs when he's not the starter, and then into the playoffs when he is, even if it is changed divisions. If anything, I think this division's harder. I know you're getting rid of Carolina, but you're gaining Boston, and you're getting rid of Columbus, but you're gaining Buffalo. I would say that's a little better. Carolina is probably the best of those 4, but they have their goaltending issues. Anyway, I'd like to know what you think about this. If you have any comments about it, I'd love to hear them. And you can tell me I'm an idiot, or say I'm really smart about this. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.